I spent 14 years searching for my son before I found out he was never missing. I had my son at 22 and lost him at 23. Postpartum depression hit me like a truck, and my ex used it to take everything. He won full custody and then vanished with my 1-year-old boy and left no address and no phone number and no way to find them. My parents held me while I sobbed and helped me hire investigators and call police stations in every state, but every lead went nowhere. Then a PI finally found a woman who used to be my ex's neighbor, and she agreed to talk. I called my mother that night to tell her the news. "Is this the neighbor from the place by the lake?" she asked. I stopped breathing for a second. I had never said anything about a lake. She laughed nervously on the other end. I must have assumed, just ignore me. I told myself she was right and got back to focusing on finally finding my son. I called the neighbor the next morning, and as soon as I said my name, her voice changed. "I can't talk about this. Please don't call me again." She hung up before I could respond. I drove to her house and knocked for 20 minutes until she finally came to the window. "Stop looking," she said through the glass. "You need to leave this alone, please," I said. "Anything. I just need to find my son." She shook her head and mouthed the word, "Sorry," before shutting the curtain. The PI had mentioned she knew what school district my ex enrolled my son in, so I called every school in that area pretending to verify enrollment for a transfer. Most of them were helpful. Then I called one, and the administrator asked me to spell my name twice. I heard typing, and then her voice went flat. "Someone will call you back." Nobody ever called me back. I called again 2 hours later, and a different woman answered. "Ma'am, we've been instructed not to speak with you." I asked, instructed by who, and she hung up. My hands would not stop shaking. Someone knew I was looking. Someone was making calls ahead of me and shutting doors before I could reach them. I tried to trace my ex through employment records, but everything was scrubbed cleaner than it should have been. People do not stay this hidden for this long without help. And then it hit me. My mother had asked about the lake when I never mentioned it. My mother had called every few hours to ask exactly where I was in my search. Every single lead she knew about had gone cold within days. 14 years of near misses and trails that went nowhere suddenly made sense. The next morning I called her. "Mom, I'm done. The trail is dead. I can't do this anymore." She was quiet for a second, and then her voice lifted. "Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you for finally letting go. It's time to move on with your life." I could hear the relief dripping off every word. I hung up and waited. If my mother really was the one blocking me, then she would stop making calls now that she thought I had given up. 3 hours later, I called the power company in the county where my ex was last seen and asked to verify service at an address under his name. The clerk read me an address out loud before catching herself. I wrote it down and grabbed my keys. I did not drive to the address. I drove to my parents' house instead. I walked through the front door without knocking and heard singing coming from the dining room. "Happy birthday to you." I turned the corner and saw balloons and streamers and a cake with 15 candles glowing in the center of the table. A teenage boy sat at the head of the table with his eyes closed and his hands folded like he was making a wish. My ex sat beside him. My parents stood behind them with their hands on his shoulders. My son blew out the candles and everyone cheered, and then my mother looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. Her face went white as paper. The room went dead silent. My son looked around at the adults and asked, "Who is that?" My mother moved toward me fast. "Nobody. She was just leaving." I stepped past her and walked toward the table. "I'm your mom. I've been looking for you since." My son grabbed the cake with both hands and hurled it at me. It hit me square in the chest and icing splattered everywhere, and he was on his feet screaming, "Get out! You're a drunk and a liar and you left me. You chose alcohol over your own kid." My father grabbed my arm hard and tried to shove me toward the door. I ripped free and reached for my son, and he scrambled backward, knocking his chair over. "Don't touch me. Grandma told me everything you did." My mother was screaming now too. "You are ruining his birthday. I spent 14 years protecting him from you." My son went completely still. The anger on his face flickered into confusion. 14 years? He looked at my mother. "You told me she gave me up when I was 3. My mother opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I looked my son in the eyes and said, "They took you from me. I never gave you up." My mother's face twisted into something horrible. She looked at me like I was garbage and said, "We raised you. We knew exactly what kind of mother you would turn out to be. He deserved better than what we got stuck with." My son stared at the woman who had just called his mother a mistake. He backed away from his grandparents slowly. He looked at me with icing still dripping down my shirt and said, "I want to hear your side."